The person who once made you feel so safe, so loved, is now the source of your deepest pain. This is the insidious nature of covert narcissistic abuse. Through 9 subtle betrayals, they slowly chip away at your self-worth, leaving you feeling lost, confused, and doubting your own reality. But you're not alone, and it's not your fault. In this video, we're exposing these tactics and how they operate. So if you're ready to take the first step towards healing, let's get started with the first subtle betrayal of a covert narcissist. And this one creeps up very slowly. So at first, it may seem like a small thing. Your partner questioning your memory of a conversation or suggesting that you're overreacting to a situation. But over time, these subtle gaslighting tactics can add up to a profound betrayal, not just by your partner, but by your own mind. So imagine this. You distinctly remember your partner promising to attend an important event with you. But when that day arrives, they act like they have no idea what you're talking about. I never said I would go with you. You must be misremembering. So at first you stand your ground and you're sure of your recollection. You know you heard what you heard. But as they continue to deny it, you start to doubt yourself. Maybe you did misunderstand. This is how gaslighting works, and especially how it creeps in by slowly, subtly undermining your trust in your own perceptions. So your partner might deny things they've said or twist your words to make you seem irrational. They may also tell you that your emotional responses are way out of proportion and that you're being crazy or too sensitive. Those things are so common. And over time, these constant invalidations can make you start to question your own sanity. And this is where the true betrayal lies. Not just in the outright manipulation, but in the way it turns you against yourself. You start to second guess your own memories, your own intuition. You might find yourself apologizing for things you're not even sure you did wrong, or doubting your own judgment, even on the smallest decisions. This self-doubt can be insidious, creeping into every area of your life. If you've experienced it, I think you know what I'm talking about. So over time, this gaslighting can lead to a profound sense of self-betrayal. You're no longer standing up for your own truth, but instead your partner is dictating your reality. And now let's look at a comment from one of you who has experienced this subtle betrayal firsthand. Mine told me for years that they had a poor short-term memory. It was their #1 get-out clause for everything. One day they asked their doctor for a memory test. When the doctor asked why, they said, "Because my wife keeps telling me that I have a bad memory." In a flash, they'd twisted decades of gaslighting me into it being the other way around. They thought that was hilarious. I found it seriously alarming. So if you don't know me, my name is Christina and I'm a narcissistic abuse recovery coach. And if these subtle betrayals resonate with you, I want you to know that you're not alone and that healing is definitely possible. I've helped so many other survivors navigate the journey of reclaiming their lives after narcissistic abuse. So if you're ready to take the first step, check out the link in the description for more information on how to work with me. Always remember, you deserve healing. Now let's dive into the next subtle betrayal. And that betrayal is manipulation. In a relationship with a narcissist, manipulation is a constant undercurrent. It's in the way they twist your words, the way they play on your emotions, the way they subtly control your behavior. And all of these things are such a profound betrayal of the trust and quality that should form the foundation of a healthy relationship. But possibly the most insidious part of this manipulation is how it can lead you to betray your own sense of reality and autonomy. So picture this. You've been saving up for months to buy a new laptop. But your partner suddenly expresses an interest in some expensive gadget that they absolutely need. They start by showering you with affection and praise, saying how much they appreciate your financial savvy. Then they casually mention how great it would be if you could lend them the money you've been saving, promising, of course, to pay you back soon. Now, if you're caught off guard by their charm and not wanting to disappoint them, which we do find ourselves in those situations sometimes, you might be tempted to put your own needs on hold. And even if you try to stand your ground, a narcissistic partner will continue to chip away at your resolve. They will keep bringing up that laptop repeatedly each time with a new angle. They might say something like, I feel like you're not considering my needs in this relationship. So eventually, after this subtle chipping away at you, you start to doubt yourself. Maybe you are being selfish. They might even call you a narcissist, and you might start to believe it. So you might start thinking, you know what? My old laptop is good enough. I'll let that go for the sake of this relationship. But here's the thing. If you are in a healthy relationship, your partner's not going to ask you to make those sorts of sacrifices for them. And they're certainly not going to demand that you do. So if you've ever been in a situation like this with a narcissist, you probably have experienced these subtle betrayals, these subtle manipulation tactics. So they might use things like guilt and shifting goalposts or gaslighting to control your decision. And the dangerous thing about this is that it's subtle control. You feel all along like you're making the decision, but they're making it very difficult for you to make the decision that you actually want. And in doing this, they've undermined your autonomy. And this is where the self-betrayal comes in. When we do things like this, we're allowing their version of the truth to override our own. And we end up compromising our own needs and desires just to appease this other person. And this is a small example, right? Maybe you didn't need the laptop. Maybe it wasn't worth all of the drama that it caused, right? But over time, things like this can lead you to a profound loss of self. The more you sacrifice yourself for someone else, the more you're going to lose yourself. Now let's look at a comment from one of you who is taking strides in breaking generational cycles. My mom actually gaslighted me and guilt tripped me a lot growing up. I actually thought this was right, and I thought that I was the problem and there was something wrong with me. Then, after I learned more about gaslighting and guilt tripping, I started pointing it out, and eventually Mom started recognizing it. And I know that some of you are probably thinking, well, a narcissist would never recognize it. They would never admit fault. And you're right. But I added this comment here for a reason. So not everyone who behaves in these ways is actually a narcissist with NPD. Sometimes toxic behaviors are learned, and I say that from experience. And yes, if this person's mom had been a narcissist with NPD, she wouldn't have changed or even wanted to admit fault. But the fact that she did, this right here is why I don't recommend walking away from important relationships until you've given the other person the opportunity to change their ways. And on the other hand, if you've given them ample opportunity to change their ways and they just shut you down and gaslight you and guilt trip you more, there's not much to be done there. So the things we're talking about here today are pretty heavy and they can be extremely painful when you're experiencing them in your own life. But I want to ask for your help to help shift the narrative for you and for everyone here watching today. So if you've ever had a narcissist manipulate you into doubting your own decisions, comment with the words, I trust myself. Let's flood those comments with a reminder of our own inner wisdom and strength. So now let's talk about the early days of a relationship with a narcissist. Those days can feel like a fairy tale, can't they? They shower you with affection, attention, and grand gestures of love. You might feel like the center of this person's universe. I work with a lot of survivors of narcissistic abuse, and some common things that I hear about the love bombing phase are that this person felt like my soulmate. I'm sure this is my twin flame, or I was sure it was my twin flame. And another super, super common one is I finally felt seen. It felt like this person saw me like no one else ever has in my life. And if you've ever felt that way in a relationship, you know it's intoxicating. But as intoxicating as this love bombing phase can be, it's actually a setup for the most profound betrayal. And not just by the narcissist, but it ends up feeling like it's a betrayal by your own heart. So imagine this. After weeks of your new partner's intense adoration, you're absolutely smitten. I love that word, smitten. But in these moments, you've never felt so seen, so appreciated, so loved. And you start to let your guard down, sharing your deepest hopes and your vulnerabilities. You trust them completely, believing that this is the real deal. But then almost as suddenly as it began, their attitude towards you shifts. The compliments turn into criticisms. The grand gestures are replaced by a withering indifference. They start to point out your flaws, questioning why they ever found you so special in the first place. And you end up feeling like there's something wrong with you because you feel like this person was head over heels, but then once they actually got to know you, then that's when things changed. So you may end up feeling with a deep sense of shame in who you are. and feeling like you're actually not worthy of love. That is one common thread through all of these relationships, is that a relationship with a narcissist will absolutely trigger that feeling of not being enough and of being unlovable. But really what happened is this is their style of manipulation and abuse. The narcissist built you up only to tear you down. And they used your own feelings against you, manipulating your desire for love and connection to gain your trust, then withdrawing it abruptly to maintain control. And this is how the trauma bond is formed. And if you want to know more about the trauma bond, I will link to a playlist that I have on the subject. But the deeper betrayal in all of this is the one that happens within yourself. That's why these relationships are so painful, because a lot of the conflict that's happening is a representation of the conflict that's going on within. And so when you detach from this person, it's very difficult to detach from them because everything got all mixed up. You have inner conflict and you have outer conflict, and it's difficult to tell which end is up. But another danger of the love bombing phase is that you end up ignoring the red flags. In those moments where you feel this is too good to be true, or you might feel like, that was weird. This is moving a little too fast. I don't know if I'm comfortable with this, but it feels so good that you just persist. And because it does feel so good, you don't realize what's happening, but you're allowing yourself to become dependent on their validation, their approval. And then when they begin the devaluation phase, you start to internalize their criticisms. You start to believe that maybe you aren't so special after all, that maybe you deserve all this withdrawal of love. You blame yourself for the change in their behavior, and they blame you too. But really all it is it's a manipulation tactic. And once you're really deep into it and the real devaluation and abuse begin, you still find yourself constantly chasing the high of those early days. And you find yourself accepting breadcrumbs in their place. But the real problem here is that the reason we do this is because our self-worth gets tied up in their approval. And so you feel like when you get those breadcrumbs, it's just a little bit of validation that you're worthy. And here's the illusion, because we become so hyper fixated on those little breadcrumbs, we don't necessarily see the impact of all the devaluation that happens in between. And all along, the more you're being devalued, the more your self-worth is under attack. So your self-esteem, your self-confidence just keeps going lower and lower. And the lower it goes, the more you cling to those tiny little breadcrumbs. So if you're in a relationship like this right now, please understand that it does not get better. It only gets worse, and it only gets more difficult to leave. And here's a comment from one of you who's been through it and has the clarity of hindsight. It really is 2020 after all. I thought it was a bit weird that we didn't know each other super well yet, and she was treating me like I was Jesus or something. I just ignored it and felt happy that I finally found someone who liked me. Then the devaluation phase started, and she did things like pick on my insecurities, showed no empathy when I was feeling down, and instead just told me to grow up and constantly tried to make me feel like I was inferior and that she was superior. So love bombing, I've mentioned, is the first phase of a relationship with a narcissist and the most dangerous. But there are other phases, and if you want to learn more about them, I have a free download with a checklist that you'll find in the description that you can use to see how your experience stacks up against the phases of narcissistic abuse. So the next subtle betrayal is so much more damaging than it appears on the surface, especially when there are patterns of it. What I'm talking about is called triangulation. And triangulation is a particularly insidious form of betrayal because it doesn't just involve you and your narcissistic partner. It brings in a third party, using them as a tool to manipulate your emotions and keep you out of balance. So now imagine you're in a relationship with a narcissist and your partner starts to frequently mention their ex in conversations and subtly comparing you unfavorably to them. So the narcissist might say something like, "She always knew how to make me laugh," right after criticizing your sense of humor. Or they might reminisce about their ex's culinary skills right after complaining about the meal you just cooked. These comparisons sting, making you feel inadequate and insecure. But it's not just exes the narcissist might use in triangulation. They might flirt openly with a coworker or friend right in front of you, or they might share intimate details of your relationship with their family, twisting the narrative to paint you as a problem. They might even use your own friends or family members, trying to win them over so that they side with the narcissist whenever you have a conflict. So the biggest problem with this betrayal is that it undermines your sense of security and exclusivity in the relationship. By constantly bringing up other people or comparing you to other people, your partner is sending the message that you are not enough, and maybe that they have other options. So they're using your own jealousy and fear of abandonment against you, keeping you in a state of constant competition for their affection. And here's where it gets worse. So in response to this type of triangulation, you might find yourself compromising your own values and your own needs. You might start to tolerate behaviors that you once would have considered deal breakers, because by now the trauma bond has probably taken hold and you're so afraid of losing your partner to someone else. And if they're painting other people against you, you might start isolating yourself from your own support system, thinking maybe that they have a bad opinion of you or that they will if your partner can turn them against you. And then because this other person is elevating someone else while at the same time simultaneously pushing you down, and this has a profound effect on your self-worth, you might even start to blame yourself for your partner's wandering eye or emotional infidelity. Or you might blame yourself for all the things that the narcissist is going around saying behind your back. But the truth of the matter is that all of this is nothing more than a reflection of their own insecurities. And here's a quick insight from the comment section. At some point, a narc will try to put you in competition with an ex, or will gang up with another narc to help them bully you. Yep. That's it in a nutshell. And much like a lot of the other manipulations of a narcissist, this one is so harmful because it really just plays on your own insecurities and your own fears. But if you are done playing the narcissist's triangulation games and ready to reclaim your peace, comment the words, "I choose me," right now. Let's prove to ourselves and each other that we're prioritizing our own well-being. Starts here and now. And prioritizing your own well-being includes choosing partners that always have your back. And that's not a narcissist. So most of us are going to expect some level of support from a partner, especially when you're having a conflict with someone else. Now, of course, there are those moments where we need an objective opinion because we're not always right. But these things should be delivered in a loving way, not in throwing the other person under the bus kind of way, which is exactly what you'll find with a narcissist. If you have a narcissist in your life, you'll find that they're constantly siding with others against you, even siding with people who clearly have it out for you. This betrayal not only undermines the sense of partnership that you should feel in a relationship, but it can also lead you to betray your own sense of reality. So let me explain with a little scenario. Imagine you come to your partner upset after a confrontation with a friend. You explain how your friend has been constantly disrespectful to you. So instead of validating your feelings and providing some level of support, your partner says something like, "Well, maybe if you weren't so sensitive, this wouldn't be a problem. Have you even considered that you might be overreacting?" And a response like this right here is a double betrayal. Not only is your partner failing to support you, but they're also implying that your feelings aren't valid. They're suggesting that the problem lies with you, not with your friend's behavior. And much like these other subtle betrayals, over time, this siding with others can seriously erode your trust in your own perceptions. Because if your partner is always suggesting that you're the one at fault, that's going to be your go-to whenever you have any sort of confrontation or whenever you have a problem with something that someone else did or said in your presence. You've got that little voice in your head that's saying, maybe I'm being too sensitive, or here, I guess I'm overreacting again. And not only does this interfere with your other relationships, but you're going to start doing that in all relationships, which can give abusive people a free pass to be abusive because they can always just say, you know what, you're too sensitive, and you might believe them. And if you've dealt with this for long enough, and if it's affected you deeply enough, you may find that you don't even want to stand up for yourself because you've been conditioned to believe that your perspective isn't valid and you're always wrong. But that isn't reality. You can't always be wrong. And you do have a voice and you are allowed to set boundaries. And that's what I'm talking about when I say that this type of abuse gets you to betray your own sense of reality. Because essentially what happens is that the abusive person's reality overrides your own. And here's a comment from someone who's been there. He takes the opposite views on things that I share that mean something to me. I asked him recently why, and he said he just likes to play devil's advocate. It's so hurtful that he can't even empathize with me at all. So if you're finding these subtle betrayals relatable at all so far, go ahead and hit that like button now. You'll quickly see that you definitely are not alone. And if you want to be among the first to watch my next video along with me, be sure you're subscribed so you can be notified when it drops. So next, we're on to one of the most painful forms of betrayal in a relationship with a narcissist. And that is when they provoke you into lashing out, only to use your reaction against you. This is known as reactive abuse, and it's a way for the narcissist to flip the script, painting you as the unstable or abusive one. But the real betrayal here is how it makes you question yourself and your own emotional stability. So now imagine this scenario. Your partner has been giving you the silent treatment for days, stonewalling your every attempt to communicate, and they're ignoring your texts, walking out of the room whenever you enter. The tension is building, and you're feeling increasingly frustrated and powerless. Finally, you snap. You yell at them and call them out on their behavior. Maybe you even slam a door. That's when the narcissist's demeanor changes. Look at you. Ooh, you're a little unstable, aren't you? I don't think I'm the problem here. Actually, I think you need help. And this sudden shift, it's profoundly disorienting. Just moments ago, you were the one being mistreated, but now your partner has turned the tables, using your own reaction to paint you as the aggressor. And here, because you've probably acted a little bit out of character, maybe, you start to question whether your reaction was indeed disproportionate or unhinged. You may even start to blame yourself for the entire conflict, because after all, they have planted the seed that you're unstable. And so when you start believing that, you start applying it to everything you know about your interactions. And over time, this really erodes at your sense of self-trust. And you might even believe that you're the narcissist or that you're the one who needs help. That ultimately at the root of all of it, that you're the one who has the problem. And while it's good to self-reflect, it's also good to take a realistic view of the picture. So maybe there are things that you did that you aren't proud of, but we also need to look at when other people are overstepping our boundaries or when other people are being manipulative. It's really important to look at the whole picture. And now let's look at a comment from one of you. My ex is a narcissist and has even admitted to being one. He triggers me and I come back with reactive abuse, and I can't stand it. It's not me, but I'm tired of it. He doesn't seem to understand any of this. And reactive abuse is extremely dangerous because really what it is it's using your own emotions against you. All right, now let's talk about a subtle betrayal I know many of you have experienced. And I'm talking about lies of omission. So in a healthy relationship, partners share their lives with each other. They keep each other informed about their plans, their feelings, sometimes their whereabouts. But when you're with a narcissist, you may find yourself constantly in the dark. They may withhold critical information from you, leaving you feeling confused, excluded, and a little paranoid. This is a subtle betrayal of trust that can lead you to betray your own need for transparency and honesty in the relationship. So now you imagine you have a partner who often comes home late from work, offering vague explanations about their whereabouts. And they're always on their phone, but they quickly hide the screen when you come near. This person will probably make plans without consulting you, and then you find out about important decisions after the fact. But whenever you ask for more transparency, they accuse you of being controlling or untrusting. This withholding of information is a form of lying by omission. Your partner is keeping parts of their life secret from you, excluding you from their inner world. And this secrecy can breed a deep sense of insecurity in the relationship. You may start to feel like you don't really know your partner, like they have a whole separate life that you're not a part of. So now what do you do when you desperately want or need this relationship to work? When you feel like you're trauma bonded and this relationship becomes the most important thing to you, what do? Well, we can only change ourselves. And so when our goal is staying with this manipulative person, we might start to tell ourselves that we're being too needy or too controlling. And the narcissist is probably saying these things too. If you're in this place, you may silence your own desire to be included and informed, believing that you should just blindly trust your partner, even though everything in you is telling you that you shouldn't. And here's a good example of these lies of omission at play from the comment section. My wife asked and received from my mother $12,000 to help us migrate to her home country, promising to return the money upon arrival. She didn't mention a word about this to me, and of course, never paid back to my mother. And now let's get real. If you're tired of the narcissist's secrets and ready for relationships based on honesty and transparency, comment, "I deserve the truth," below. Let's affirm our rights to open and honest communication. So this next betrayal isn't as subtle as the rest, but it's possibly the most hurtful. This is when the narcissist uses your vulnerabilities against you. You see, in the early stages of a relationship with a narcissist, you may find yourself opening up to them in ways you've never done before. During the love bombing phase, they make you feel safe, understood, and accepted. And so you let your guard down, sharing your deepest fears, insecurities, and vulnerabilities. You trust them completely, believing that they'll cherish this sensitive information and use it to form a deeper connection with you. That's your intent in sharing it, after all. And they may even actively encourage this vulnerability, asking you probing questions about your past, your family, and your emotional wounds. And at the time, it feels like genuine interest. It feels like they're just trying to get to know you better on a deeper level. And they seem so empathetic and understanding that you feel like you can just share more and more. And you feel like you finally found someone who truly sees you and accepts you for who you are. But if you've been in a relationship with a narcissist, you know this is not going to a good place. The narcissist eventually will start devaluing you and using your vulnerabilities against you, whether directly or indirectly. So if they know that you have, let's say, an unworthy wound, or if they know that you have a wound around being left out, they're always going to leave you out. And you may not connect it back to that moment where you told them that story about your childhood, but they know exactly how to push your buttons because you told them. And this is not your fault, because you should be able to be vulnerable with people who you love and trust. So that's an example of a narcissist indirectly using these vulnerabilities against you. But directly, they may throw it in your face. If they know that you had a challenging relationship with your mother, let's say, they may say you're acting exactly like your mother. They're going to hit you where it hurts. And these cruel jabs seem to come out of nowhere. They blindside you and they leave you reeling. You start to feel like you can't trust them or anyone else with your true self. And that's the real danger of it, because the truth is you can't trust them, but you should be able to trust other people. And you should be able to be your authentic self around people who love you. And throughout this process, their lack of empathy becomes glaringly obvious as they continue to use your pain against you. And this is kind of like the narcissist poking at some deep wounds that you already have. And again, this is how these things get all tangled up. There's the wounds and the conflicts that you have within, and the narcissist is bringing them up. They're drudging all of that stuff up into this relationship here, but it's really deep stuff. So the pain that you're feeling isn't necessarily just the pain from this relationship. It just gets all tangled up and it feels like it is. And here's a comment from one of you who has experienced this. They know your vulnerabilities, mirror you, then use it against you later. Worse, if they know you were already abused, then they use it against you and call you a victim when you're really a survivor. So if you are reclaiming your power and refusing to let your vulnerabilities be used as weapons, comment below, "I am worthy." Let's fill this space with a reminder of our inherent worth and dignity. Now, let's talk about a narcissist's ultimate goal in this relationship, which is to maintain power and control. And one of the most effective ways they do this is by slowly, methodically undermining your confidence. They chip away at your self-esteem, making you doubt yourself and your own perceptions, until you become so unsure of yourself that you become dependent on them for validation and guidance. So at first, their criticism may be subtle, even disguised as helpful suggestions or little jokes. They may say something like, "Ooh, that outfit really doesn't suit you. Why don't you wear something else?" And then as the relationship progresses, of course, these attacks on your self-esteem become more overt. Even if you're dealing with a covert narcissist, they become bolder with you over time. So they might outright ridicule your ideas, dismiss your accomplishments, or compare you unfavorably to others. They may even say something like, "You're lucky to have them because no one else would put up with you, or no one else would be so honest about your flaws." And slowly but surely, you start to internalize those messages, and your inner critic grows louder and louder. And once they've gotten you to believe that you cannot handle yourself, guess what else you're not going to trust? Your intuition. You're not going to trust that you have any sort of inner compass that's going to lead you in the right direction or help you choose the right path. So by doing all of this, they've turned you against your best judgment, your own sense of who you are, and really ultimately what you want for yourself and for your life. And although it starts so subtly and seemingly benign, maybe even seemingly well-intentioned, when it escalates, this betrayal can have a devastating impact on your mental health and emotional well-being. And you may ultimately end up feeling like you've lost touch with who you really are. And this absolutely can lead to feelings of anxiety and depression. And on the other side, you may beat yourself up for allowing this to happen or for allowing it to go so far. But none of it is your fault. Again, these are subtle betrayals. And so if you point to each one, especially when they start happening early on, again, they may look benign and they may look well-intentioned, but they escalate over time so gradually that you don't really notice what's happening until you notice that you're disconnected from yourself and your self-worth is in the toilet. As one survivor shared, the hardest part wasn't just that he made me doubt myself. It was that he made me doubt my own doubts. Whenever I would start to question his behavior or stand up for myself, he would twist things around until I was the one apologizing. When I look back on it, it feels almost like he turned me against myself. All right, so if you're relating to all of this and you find yourself constantly looking to your partner for validation, feeling like you can't trust your own perceptions, or like you've lost sight of who you truly are, it may be that a narcissistic partner has undermined your sense of confidence so deeply that you don't even recognize yourself anymore. So remember, no one knows you better than you know yourself. And learning to trust yourself and your own instincts is a crucial part of healing from narcissistic abuse. So if this video has been a wake-up call and you're ready to start your healing journey, comment below, "I'm breaking free." Join me and everyone else who's watching right now to create a chain of empowerment and support for everyone who's ready to leave narcissistic abuse behind. And if you need one-on-one support to do this, check out the link in the description for more on how I might be able to help. And to learn more about the after effects of narcissistic abuse, watch the video that's just about to pop up on the screen, where we try to have a little bit of fun and play a little game to lighten the mood. And if you haven't hit that like button already, be sure to do that before you go, and I'll see you next time.